Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and today we're going to take a look at the Game Week 32 highest predicted points team. So basically the best 11 players that you can field for Game Week 32, and I'm sure this will be relevant for those of you guys who are on a free hit like me in Game Week 32 to deal with the blanks for Manchester United, Chelsea, Brighton and Manchester City. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and if you do, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. So just before we jump into this video, I want to talk a little bit about DraftHound, because this video uses the predicted points model from DraftHound, and on top of them being the source of today's video, they are also the sponsor of today's video. DraftHound is an FPL manager's dream, and the best part is it's free to use. There's a full suite of useful tools like fixture analysis that you see here, with winning odds, clean sheet odds and over 2 goals odds. The one that I use really often is the clean sheet odds, which really helps when I'm stuck between which defender to bench and which defender to start, which, as you guys know, can be the difference between a green and a red arrow. Now, aside from this, there's also dream teams based on predicted points, which is also where the data for today's video has come from. And dream teams is also pretty accurate in picking out some good differentials and budget picks for the run-in. For the stats junkies, if you'd like an in-depth analysis on a player, then player rankings is the place to go, where DraftHound lets you analyze predicted points and also compare the probability of their goal involvement. So you guys get the idea. There's loads of useful tools in DraftHound, and I won't cover every single one, but I have to highlight my favorite feature before we get back to the video, and that is this assistant manager tool, where you can import your own FPL team, and DraftHound literally manages your team for you by suggesting potential transfers and optimizing your lineup for you to gain maximum points. So I cannot recommend DraftHound enough, and the best part is it's a guaranteed green arrow because you support the channel and also get an excellent FPL tool all for free. So start tinkering now. Head over to drafthound.link/FPL consult or the first link in the description to create an account today. So in goal, we actually have Johnstone. Now, Johnstone is actually really high up the predicted points this week for keepers. He's at 4.1 predicted points. He is in the top 3 keepers this week. 4.2 predicted points going to Alisson, 4.1 predicted points going to Aaron Ramsdale, and then 4.1 as well for Johnstone, who plays Everton at home. Now, in terms of these 3 keepers, Ramsdale, Alisson, and Johnstone, obviously we wouldn't want to go for Alisson, because if we are tripling up on Liverpool, we would want to go for the outfielders. Same goes for Aaron Ramsdale as well. If we are tripling up on Arsenal, we would go for the outfielders as well. So naturally, the next best keeper for this game week in terms of predicted points is Johnstone. Now, on top of him being really cheap, he also plays Everton at home, which is a plum fixture for him in terms of getting clean sheet points here. Crystal Palace have looked really good under Roy Hodgson, and they have somewhat of a revival recently. So I fully expect Johnstone to keep a clean sheet here, and same goes for the model as well, and that's probably why he has 4.1 predicted points. In the event that he doesn't keep a clean sheet, I'm sure that save points would come into play as well, and so I am pretty happy with this keeper choice by DraftHound. So in terms of defenders, we have a 3-man defense in Trippier, Trent and Fabian Schär. So one look and we already see that the model really favors Newcastle to keep a clean sheet against Tottenham. 5.5 predicted points for Trippier and 4.4 predicted points for Fabian Schär. So obviously, if you guys think that Harry Kane or Tottenham may put a goal against Newcastle, then you can just go for Trippier, who is probably going to be the higher owned of these 2 players. But in general, what I would say is that Newcastle, I know they are coming off a defeat 3-0 at Aston Villa, right, which may have hit their confidence a little bit, but I fully expect them to come back at home against Tottenham, who have looked really inconsistent this season, right? They get a couple of wins against good sides and then they drop points against weaker sides. Now, playing Newcastle at away, right, isn't the easiest fixture for Tottenham as well. And in terms of the importance of this game, Newcastle and Tottenham are both vying for European places, the Champions League places to be specific. So in general, I would say that this is probably going to be a more cagey affair, right, which may see fewer goals than we expect. Right, so I think Fabian Schär and Trippier are in this team for good reason, right? And then we have Trent as well, who plays Nottingham Forest at home, 6.5 predicted points. So he is actually the highest predicted points defender this week with 6.5 points. And obviously coming off a really good performance against Leeds, 2 assists. He is currently playing this inverted fullback role, which we have seen a couple of teams adopt, and now Trent is playing this position, and it may bode differently in terms of assists for him, but we did see that he got a couple of assists by playing the balls from the midfield position that he was in straight through to the strikers. So in general, I would say that my preference would be that Trent actually plays the right back position, because that's where he kind of swings in the most dangerous balls. But him being in this inverted fullback role may not have hit his attacking threat as much as we thought it would, right? Against Leeds, obviously he got 2 assists, as I just mentioned, so it remains to be seen how effective he will be for attacking threat in this position. But for this week against Nottingham Forest at Anfield as well, coming off a 5-1 victory against Leeds, I fully expect him to do really well. So 6.5 predicted points for Trent Alexander-Arnold. So in midfield, we have Cody Gakpo, Salah, who's the captain of this team with 8.3 predicted points, and that is the highest predicted points out of everyone here. And then Martinelli, who's the vice captain, and Saka as well. So covering this midfield here, we see that we have 2 Liverpool players and 2 Arsenal players, which is probably the way that we want to go with this first 11, right? Because Liverpool are looking really sharp now, and Arsenal, you fully expect them to do well against Southampton, right? So let's talk about the Liverpool players first. In terms of the Liverpool triple up that we're seeing here, it's Trent, Gakpo, and Salah. Now, initially my first draft had Trent, Robertson, and Salah, but looking at how Liverpool performed, maybe we could go for one more attacker. And in terms of defensive mistakes, there are still some errors here and there that they are prone to. So going for a additional attacker may not be the worst thing. And in terms of attackers, I think Cody Gakpo is probably the one who is most secure for minutes in my opinion, right? There's loads of options, I'm aware of that, right? There's Luis Diaz, who's coming back from injury. There's also Firmino. There's also Darwin Núñez, Jota, who did really well, right? And also there's Harvey Elliott and other players that could fill in those roles. So they have loads of options, but in general, I would say that Gakpo is the one that looked really sharp out of all these players, of course, aside from Salah, right? But Gakpo played really well. Jota, I know he did score the highest points out of the Liverpool attackers in game week 31, but that being said, I think he did look a little, rusty in terms of his touches, and he did look not quite as sharp as he usually would be, right? So Gakpo is the one that I think would be more secure for minutes, and that's why he is in this team as well, right? And 6.3 predicted points for him is actually one of the highest in terms of Liverpool players, right? He's actually right behind Trent and Salah, right? So 6.3 is a respectable prediction for him. And then Salah, of course, he plays Nottingham Forest at home, similar to all the other Liverpool players, but he has 8.3 predicted points, right? And that's why he's the captain. I think in general, looking at the way that he performed against Leeds, you could say that he is back to his best. Yes, he missed a couple of penalties here and there. It remains to be seen whether the penalties would still be with Salah, right? But even so, without penalties at Anfield against Nottingham Forest, I would fully expect Salah to be able to hit 8.3 predicted points at least. Now, last 2 midfielders in this midfield, we have Martinelli and Saka. Now, Martinelli is actually at 7 predicted points, which is higher than Saka. And in terms of his performances recently, I think you would say that is fair. Martinelli has looked more sharp out of the 2. I think Saka has dropped off a little bit since his 18-pointer against Crystal Palace. Since then, he's only gotten a total of 2 points from 3 games. Now, obviously, that includes the Leeds game where he did not start because of an illness. But even so, in general, I would say that 2 points in 3 games, right, isn't the best for Saka, right? But even so, he is still in this team. Arteta has kind of hinted that he will still be on penalties, right? He kind of hinted that Saka is the kind of player that will bounce back from this, and he won't be mentally affected by this. He will be able to still take the penalties for Arsenal, right? So of course it remains to be seen, but Saka, on top of having that potential penalties, he is still one of the more favoured attackers for Arteta. He's guaranteed 90 minutes. Against West Ham, we did see Saka play 90 minutes out of the other attackers that were taken off, right? Martinelli was taken off, Jesus was taken off as well, right? So I think Saka is most nailed, and in general at home, Saka is a different animal, right? He looks really good at home, right, as compared to his away form. Now, talking a little bit about Martinelli first before we jump onto the forwards. I think Martinelli, we have seen him justify his point predictions here. 7 predicted points, and in general he is a very lively attacker. He's put in the most balls, most crosses into the box, and he's looked most sharp out of the wingers, right, out of Trossard, Saka and Martinelli. Now in general, I would say that Martinelli has been overperforming a little bit, but I think it is justified given the number of chances he is creating and the number of chances and positions that he's taking up as well. So I do like these two Arsenal picks. You could obviously go for a defender, right? Gabriel, who plays Southampton at home as well. You could replace him with Shah and then maybe go without Saka. But in general, the model feels like the double Arsenal attack here for the midfield spots, right, would be the most ideal, right? So here are our 4 midfielders. Let's take a look at the forward line. So up front, we have Ollie Watkins, Gabriel Jesus, and Alexander Isak. So talking a bit about Watkins first, he is at 5.2 predicted points, which I feel is a little bit modest. I think he should get a little bit more against Brentford away. Given his form, right, he is looking like the most sharp striker up front now, just behind Erling Haaland, of course, right? But actually in 2023, Watkins has outscored Erling Haaland, right? So I actually do think like Ollie Watkins is a really great option this week and kind of an essential if you ask me, given his form. Right? I fully expect him to actually outscore his predicted points of 5.2, but let's see how he does. He definitely will be in my free hit 32 team. Now talking a bit about Jesus first, 6.9 predicted points for him. He is actually looking really sharp since he came back from injury. He has dropped in a couple of different roles for Arsenal. As usual, when he plays, he doesn't just play the number 9 role, he always drops back a little bit, kind of links up play as well. But when he is needed in the box to be at the end of crosses, he is always there. Now, there is a slight chance that Jesus may be on penalties ahead of Saka. As I mentioned just now, even though Arteta kind of hinted that Saka will still be on penalties, that still remains to be seen. But the next best penalty taker would then be Gabriel Jesus. So 6.9 predicted points for him. He plays at home against Southampton. Fully expect him to do well, right? And then lastly, we have Alexander Isak. Now he plays Tottenham at home, and once again the model really favors Newcastle here, right? The model really favors the Newcastle players to do really well against Tottenham, right? And at home, you actually fully expect them to, because Tottenham have been really struggling defensively and attackingly as well. So 5.2 predicted points for Isak. The only concern here is whether he shares some minutes with Callum Wilson. We still do not know who is the first choice, and Eddie Howe has sometimes kind of mentioned that Isak could play together with Callum Wilson, right? But that would mean that Isak would be on the left, right? So whether that bodes well for his attacking threat, it remains to be seen. But I think 5.2 predicted points for Isak is pretty accurate, I would say, right? I would expect him to maybe get a goal if he starts, right? So I think Isak could do really well. There are loads of other forward options, right? So Solanke is a decent option as well. Of course, Harry Kane is the obvious forward that we're missing here, but the model really favors Newcastle, as I mentioned, right? And then loads of other options in the forward line on top of these players. There's Ivan Toney you could go for as well, but the model here has chosen the top 3, which is Jesus, Isak and Watkins at 6.9 for Jesus, 5.2 for Isak, and 5.2 for Ollie Watkins. So in general, just some thoughts about this team is I would say that a 3-4-3 is the most ideal, simply because for my own draft as well, I'm looking for a 3-4-3 formation, and I think in general the defenders or defensive options this week aren't that great, right? The forwards and the midfielders are kind of where the points would be, right? So that's why we want to load up on them. And given that I just mentioned we have loads of forward options, we go for 3 forwards and then 4 midfielders, which naturally just leaves us with a back 3. So in terms of formation, I think DraftHound has really got it spot on here. In terms of the Liverpool triple up as well, I think definitely I'd go for this Liverpool 3. As I mentioned just now, I went for Robertson at the start, but given how they performed against Leeds, maybe I go for Gakpo instead of Robertson. In terms of the Arsenal attackers, right, Saka, Martinelli and Jesus, also the 3 that I would choose. Ollie Watkins definitely going to be in my team as well. Johnstone is also my keeper currently. So the only areas where I kind of differ a little bit from the model here is Fabian Schär and Alexander Isak. I still do think like Harry Kane may get a goal here, right? We know Harry Kane has been really consistent, so I do expect him to do decently, right? So he is still in my team. Obviously, he may be out of my team by the time the deadline comes. But I have Harry Kane here instead of Isak, and I also have another defender. Basically, I haven't decided whether I want a Crystal Palace defender in place of Fabian Schär, or I could go elsewhere as well, right? But in general, I would say that the formation is really good. Captaincy, I think, is on Salah, of course, as well, especially after his performance against Leeds, right? So let me know what you guys think of this team, right? Do you agree with some of the picks here, and what changes would you make to this team, right? Obviously, we can use this as a reference point, but do make your own decisions, and based on your own predictions, right, form your own free hit squad. But hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. And I'll catch you guys in more Game Week 32 content very soon. Bye bye.